Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining. During today's webinar, we're going to discuss how Mars identifies and remediates security risk within their cloud infrastructure with automated workflows. To help us walk through all of this, we have some great content and some amazing speakers from Wiz, Shashank Gola, Walter Porto from Mars, and myself, Aaron Sandow from Tines. Let's go ahead and kick this off with some introductions. So I'll start off with myself. Again, my name's Aaron Sandow. I'm a solutions engineer here at Tines. If you're not familiar with Tines, Tines is a smart, secure workflow builder used by the world's leading security teams to power their most important workflows. A little bit about my career and brief history on my experience. Before I started at Tines, I advised enterprise customers in many different industries and verticals, including virtualization, endpoint security, identity, and now automation. In particular, I'm super excited about this webinar because as a solutions engineer, I had the opportunity to work with Mars during their initial state before they were a Tines or a Wiz customer. Fast forward to this webinar, and now I get to learn all about what Mars's current state is today, how their transition went to Tines and Wiz, and what's in store for them in the future. To make this a little fun, I'll give you a fun fact about myself. I live in a sunny Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I love the beach, water, and any kind of outdoor sport. Shashank, do you want to talk a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm joining y'all from Washington, D.C. in the U.S. Would love to see in the chat where everybody else is from. Feel free to throw that in there just so we get a little bit of context. I'm a product marketer at Wiz. And if you're not familiar with Wiz, we help secure cloud environments, and we'll kind of walk through in a little bit more detail what we do. But specifically, I focus on integration. So if you're a Wiz customer and you're on the line now, you'll know that Wiz collects a lot of really critical risk and threat security information, and Wiz likes to make those insights kind of easy to be able to be embedded in your other security workflows, kind of bi-directionally. And one of those solutions that we integrate with is Tines. So I'm really excited to kind of talk about this solution and also kind of walk through Mars's and Walter's story with both Wiz and Tines. I started my career in tech about 10 years ago. Started as a software engineer, moved to product management, product marketing, kind of did a ton of different roles at companies like Datadog, Nielsen, and one or two other companies, and really excited to be at Wiz right now. A fun fact about myself, about 2 years ago during COVID, I found myself getting addicted to a sport that's kind of taking over in the US called pickleball. In DC, at least, a lot of the tennis courts are now not really playing tennis; they're just playing pickleball. So if you're into sports, if you like paddle sports like ping pong or tennis, I encourage you to give it a try, but with the warning label that you may get addicted. So with that, I'll pass it on to Walter.
Thank you, Shashank. Yeah, Walter Porto here. I'm joining today from São Paulo, Brazil, so a little south from the others, right? That's where I live and I grew up anyway. You probably can tell. I lead the global cybersecurity operations at Mars, right? Looking after the security operations center, automation and orchestration functions, detection engineering, and everything in between, right? Before Mars, I was a teenager, which is roughly not true, right? I did play many roles in InfoSec arena, including disaster recovery planning, business continuity management, DLP programs, and risk and governance, right? I'm excited to be here today to share a little bit about our journey in partnership in integrating different technologies to address some of the emerging concerns from both the cybersecurity and the business strategy perspective, right? And different from Shashank, during the pandemic, I did acquire a new hobby, not so healthy as that, but I collect model trains, right? So I collect model trains, create model railroads, and that kind of thing. So pretty much indoors.
Very cool. Awesome. Thank you for the awesome introductions, both of you. And like Shashank said, very excited to see where everyone is from in the chat box as well. Okay, let's talk a little bit about our organizations and who we're representing today. I'll take the honor of going first. So again, Tines is a smart, secure workflow builder used by the world's leading security teams to power their most important workflows. We have three core traits when it comes to our product. One is that it's extremely powerful. We've made it very straightforward to be able to connect to any API. We achieve this in a couple of different ways within the product. It could be using a pre-baked template. It could be as simple as copying and pasting curl commands, but we've made it easy for anybody, regardless of their technical experience, to be able to create that connection to their tool set. We'll definitely talk more about this in a bit. Very similar, we can handle an extensive amount of massive complexity. There's some big alerts that come in from many different tools. Tines does an awesome job at being able to transform the alerts, parse through the alerts, send them to the next source wherever they need to be. And as a company, it's always been incredibly important to us to stay relentlessly focused on automation and making the lives of those building automated workflows incredibly simple. We're accessible. Tines is meant for the whole team to use. Again, regardless of their technical experience, you don't need any Python developer experience to be good at Tines. We've really done a great job of taking a few straightforward actions and making them accessible for anybody to build a workflow with. So along the same lines, it's quick to learn and it's very fulfilling. A lot of times analysts today have a hard time grasping all of the repetitive work that they're stuck doing. It's not incredibly fulfilling for them. Tines brings out the best of the analysts, allows them to get creative with their job and build their own workflows and automations. Again, without needing the developer skills that other tools might require. And finally, we're trusted. Mars, along with many other best in breed companies around the world, trust us to manage their mission critical workflows. And we can run wherever you need us. We can run run Tines in the cloud for you. We can give you a fully self-hosted air gap environment that you can run, or we could do a hybrid approach of some on-prem, some cloud. So that's a little bit about Tines. Shashank, do you want to dive into Wiz some?
Yeah, for sure. If you're not familiar with Wiz, Wiz is a cloud security platform that helps you secure anything that you build and run within your cloud lifecycle. And we kind of break up the cloud lifecycle into three different stages. So kind of starting in the middle here with Wiz Cloud. Wiz really focuses on managing and improving your security posture. So any of the risks that exist across your AWS, Azure, GCP, any cloud environments, Wiz kind of immediately is able to inventory any of your virtual machines, your databases, any of your assets that exist within those cloud environments. And once we get visibility into your infrastructure and your applications within the cloud, we then run comprehensive risk assessments that look for misconfigurations, vulnerabilities, sensitive data that kind of exist on top of any of these assets, and give you like a correlated picture of what are your biggest risks in your cloud that you need to fix now. So kind of starting with that risk assessment and posture management, we also take all of that information that's usually within production and in the cloud, and we shift that to the left as well and kind of do the risk assessment in your software development lifecycle. So whether it's in your actual code, it's in your GitHub repositories, your CI/CD pipelines, or your container images or registries, Wiz is able to run those same misconfiguration risk assessments into your software development lifecycle. So we start with like a very proactive approach of securing your cloud. But obviously there's always risks within the backlog or things that you may have missed, which lead to threat actors kind of getting into your cloud infrastructure. And that's why we kind of have Wiz in the runtime. So we have a lightweight sensor that's eBPF based that can be installed on your workloads, and we can kind of detect any sort of real-time threats that exist. So again, Wiz focuses on cloud security, starting from a proactive approach, both within your cloud production environments, shifting to the left, and then any sort of real-time threats that might be actually happening in your system.
Fantastic. Thank you, Shashank. Walter, before I pass to you, I have to say I was doing some reading before the webinar here, and I stumbled upon a really interesting fact that I was frankly surprised about. I read in a Forbes article that Mars is the fourth largest privately held company in America. So that's pretty fantastic. That's an awesome stat. That also leads me to believe that Mars is a bit more than a chocolate bar manufacturer, although that's what I always like to know Mars as. So maybe you can discuss a little bit on your end what Mars does as a company and specifically cover the scale of your team's operations.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you, Aaron. It's a privilege and a curse sometimes, right, to be in such a large company. But you're right. Mars is way more than chocolate bars or M&Ms. We are present in over 60 countries, and we have over 120,000 associates worldwide, right? So it's a lot of people around the world, and it's such a privilege to be part of this group, right? We operate in multiple segments, from candy bars like Snickers, Tweets, M&Ms, right, and pet nutrition with pet food for like Pedigree, Royal Canin, and many other brands. Human nutrition, right? Some would argue that's not nutrition, but Kind bars, right? That's my favorite snack bar anyway.
Mine too.
Ben's Original. We have Kevin's Natural Foods and everything, right? And one thing that's probably most people don't know is Mars also looks after the pets' health. We own over 1,000 veterinary hospitals around the world, and many of them are in the North America, in the United States, right? We have the VCA and Benfield and Blue Pearl brands and companies in the States, right? Yeah, and we've been on this just pivoting into the cloud security and some of our journey, right? We've been on this journey for the past couple of years, trying to balance the business strategic priorities, investments, and keeping up with the ever-changing threat landscape, right? So that combination, among other things, did lead us to partner with Tines and Wiz to try to get the best of it.
Hmm. Walter, does your team handle security operations for all of Mars brands or only a few?
Yes, our my team is cross segment, right? So we do the horizontal and collect everything from all the business segments and such. Of course, there are operational details and things that we may not need to go down here, but yes, the whole landscape.
Fantastic. And tell us a little bit more about what your approach was to cloud security prior to your partnership with Tines and Wiz.
We used a rather traditional approach, CMDB driven, and trying to implement policies that were researched and developed with along with some consultancy and the expertise of our professionals. Right, it was uh, such a cumbersome type of work to combine again partnering and combining the efforts of multiple brand management teams, business unit IT teams, central teams, right, and connecting all those processes in multiple handoffs was very messy, I should say, and required a lot of human effort from our teams to do the analysis and make sense of all the disconnected information, if I should say that.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like a bit of a cumbersome process. Was there any automation going on before Tines?
We had some. It was again the traditional approach of we had one Python Jedi in the team, the one person who had the experience. We were able to tap into that experience. It was not even his primary role, and
Mm,
that person was helping us developing and connecting all the different systems. But again, heavily manual in terms of development, single point of failure, and everything involved. So yeah, I guess it suffice to say that the person could not even go on vacation. So,
Oh wow. Oh yeah. Yep. Then and I'm guessing there was a long list of tasks for him to do, and it was getting quite like complex to be able to manage and update and fix bugs as well with the Python first approach there.
yep.
Yeah.
Aaron, just really quick, I guess right before we jump into the next slide, Walter, quick question for you. So in this kind of phase before Wiz and Tines, curious, like, how were you able to kind of understand your infrastructure in the cloud? So like, how many virtual machines you had, how many databases you had, what was like the level of visibility that you had into that in the cloud?
Yeah, it was not ideal. Right, we relied on some discovery capabilities that we built in house with again with our Python wizard, and that's where it's very controversial, right? The CMDB, but CMDB is a static thing, and it was not fast enough to adapt to the ongoing demand of growth and everything.
Okay, makes sense.
Great. Well, on our next slide here, we're going to talk about some current cloud security challenges. Shashank, this is mainly for you and I. Aside, I think a lot of what Walter was saying, we can agree with, and I think we're also seeing this out in the industry a bit as well. Do you want to maybe kick this off a little bit and talk through what challenges you're seeing in the industry?
Yeah, for sure. I asked that last question, so it could be a nice little segue into this slide. Luckily, so I guess like overall, Wiz is really focused on helping teams secure the cloud, and I think Mars is like a great example of a company that's very large, has been around for a long time, and is now looking to modernize and digitize a lot of its technologies for consumer consumption. And as they're kind of like migrating from this on-prem to cloud infrastructure, there's a lot of challenges that the security team specifically faces. And in Wiz words, we normally say like the cloud changes everything for security teams, but we can't really talk about everything. And I think, specifically like these three things: new environment, new risk, and new operating model, is the biggest challenges that we hear. So in terms of new environment, one of the biggest challenges that I hear is exactly what Walter just touched on, which is having visibility over the environment to, from a security perspective, understanding the attack surface that you're protecting, right? So how many virtual machines do I have? How many new AWS services are we using? How many databases do I have? What does that environment look like overall? And do I have an understanding of what that looks like? So I think one of the biggest challenges is not having static inventory understanding of your cloud environment, but actually being able to detect any sort of like new infrastructure that comes up. And again, this challenge comes because we are kind of entering into this shared responsibility model where developers are encouraged to spin up new EC2s, use the latest AWS services, which, I mean, at the end of the day, the security team is securing them, the things that they're deploying. So it's important to kind of get visibility into that environment. So that's one of the biggest challenges that I'm seeing from cloud security teams.
Yeah, that's a great call out. As far as a new environment goes, what I'm seeing there across the industry is there's so many security tools today that organizations are required to pick up and kind of run with, and even tools that are peripheral to security, but still important to security, like chat tools and case tools, and other types of tools that analysts are within day in and day out. Now, when it comes to an automation perspective there, we need to make it really easy to be able to connect to any of these tools. And Tines does that. We're able to connect to any API. It doesn't matter if it's REST, SOAP, GraphQL, internet facing, not internet facing. We have pre-baked templates for hundreds of products, thousands of endpoints that you could drag and drop out and use to connect to any of these new environments. We also make it as easy as copying and pasting curl commands into Tines as well. So when it comes to new environments and ensuring that your team is able to adapt and respond to all of the alerts from these environments is really where a good automation platform could come into hand.
For sure. And the second big challenge after new environments that we're seeing is new risks. I mean, this is I'm sure Walter can agree, like an age-old security question, which is, hey, I have hundreds or thousands of alerts that my security team is getting. How can I ensure that the things that my security team is working on has the largest impact? So it's an age-old question for security, but I think what the cloud introduces is a couple of things. I think the first thing is, because we've kind of come to a world where a lot of our infrastructure needs to be publicly accessible, either by consumers or by APIs, we have a lot more exposure points, right? So I think with that introduces new risks. So not only do you have to worry about what you worried about before, but there's all of these new public exposure and lateral movement risks that kind of the cloud introduces, which means there's even more alerts and even more risks that now you need to kind of, find the, what do they call it, proverbial needle in the haystack, right? And I think that kind of continues in the cloud, but like with a new challenge as well.
Yep. And then once you get those risks, and you were hinting at this a lot too, so I mainly agree with what you're saying. But it's important to be able to surface and triage these all of these risks appropriately, right? So being able to, if you have like a large event coming in, be able to transform it, pull out the data that you need, and then send it over to the next place. So you really need to be able to facilitate that appropriate automated response and remediation, but abstracting out the core information of those alerts that are pertinent to the challenge at hand.
For sure. And then the last one here is kind of the new operating model, which I like to think about in like two different ways. I think the first is the people operating model, and the second is kind of like the automation or the tasks of the operating model. I think the people part is kind of what we touched on before. There's a lot more teams involved. It's a team sport when it comes to cloud security, because again, developers are the ones that are spinning up a lot of these like new infrastructure. So I think the first operating model is, hey, how do we get the development team, the DevOps team, the security team, and the SOC team all kind of looking at the same data and working together based on who owns different parts of the infrastructure. And I think the second piece is, as all of this work is happening to secure our infrastructure, what are the repeatable tasks that we can automate so we can be more efficient in securing our environment? So I think, again, those are the two big challenges.
Yep, totally agree. Making sure the correct risk lands with the correct person in a timely manner. We're seeing all too often in today's world. The risk has to hop from like one team to another team before it actually gets fixed. Great to automate it, but it's also important to put a level of human input, inject the level of human input into automations as well. You also want to meet analysts in the middle. You don't want to enforce them to have to open up multiple tools to solve a particular problem that's going to delay time, create distractions, etc. So send prompts for humans in the tools that they're used to working in and day out. So I mean, ultimately, we'll talk more about this as we go, but Tines can facilitate the collaboration within the internal team, the external team, pause the automations for human interactions, and then log all the remediations along the way to help ensure that when your auditors come, they remain your organization remains compliant. Awesome. Okay, Walter, back to you on the hot seat here. So how do you can you describe a little bit how Mars uses Wiz and Tines together, and maybe describe some of the benefit you've seen from these tools?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is interesting, right? I think I agree with everything Shashank said in terms of new risks, and it's a whole new threat model, and being in the whole delegation and the shared responsibilities with development teams and everything. So I couldn't agree more with that assessment, right? And we had that challenge. We still have some of that challenge anyway. And Tines is helping us on making sure that, to your point, Aaron, we surface the findings and the new risks or alerts coming out of Wiz, directly to the responsible teams in a timely manner and with proper escalation path and everything, right? So if it's something really critical, do we need to enact the instant response immediately, or is it like a posture change or a policy that needs to be fixed on a given asset that needs to go to that team that's responsible for this one particular asset? That's where Tines comes in for us. We get that everything from Wiz, surface it, do some search on in terms of ownership, assess if the finding is worth escalating immediately, or if it's a remediation that can and should be done by the owner of the asset or the application in whatever, and it's going to push it to the platform where they're most used to work. In our case, it's the ticketing system, but then it lands right in front of them. We don't need to give them access to the Wiz console initially or anything, so it's not something that they're not familiar with, right? They will get that, they will know what to do and go remediate it.
Amazing. What am I looking at here, Walter? Is this what the actual automation looks like? Or?
Yeah, this is a sneak peek of this is how the playbook looks like. Actually, that is the playbook that we have in Tines. It's that simple.
Wow, funny.
If
I wonder where I got it from. So, what if some sort of complex remediation needs to happen? Are you able to allow for humans to maybe give input and pause the automation while you're waiting for them?
Yes, we have built-in workflows for approvals and cross checks. Right, I followed the mindset of trust but check. That goes a long way with automation, right? There's built-in decision trees and everything, but I still prefer to have a human being going on and making sure we are doing the right thing before we change or touch anything in the infrastructure.
Yeah, amazing. And all right, so I'm looking at.
Walter,
Oh, Shashank, go ahead.
sorry, the one question I was going to ask is, can you give us a little bit of insight into like maybe some of the decision trees that you're thinking of when you're evaluating priority? I think there's a lot of people on the call who might be thinking about like, hey, there's hundreds, thousands of alerts coming in from different places. Sure, like I'm getting Wiz issues that are prioritized and critical, but like I'm curious, like from your perspective, like how do you then take that in and make a decision of what's business critical?
Yeah, okay, I will. This is going to be a simplified version, right? But
That's fine, yeah.
it's a combination of the scores that come out of Wiz, and those scores
Mm-hmm.
there is a feedback loop in those scores done by the cloud security team, right? Of course, to
Mm-hmm.
calibrate those, and along with the information from the CMDB as well, right? And some of
Mm-hmm.
the knowledge, the internal knowledge we have about the given asset or the application where this belongs to, if it's a production system, if it's a
Mm-hmm.
financial relevant system, if it's part of any specific regulation. There are multiple dimensions that go into this decision tree.
Awesome,
That's a
thank you.
great question, Shashank. Way better than the one I had in mind. So thank you. Um, okay, so let's move on a little. Now, Walter, we looked at what you're doing with Mars and I'm sorry, we looked at what Mars is doing with Tines and Wiz today. Now, do you see other opportunities in the future to use Wiz and Tines together at Mars? What's on the horizon? What's coming next?
Yeah, so looking at the screen here, this is actually you just gave me another idea. But the next for us is it's on the works already, right? We want to leverage the data that's in Wiz to enrich alerts or other incidents that are coming from different sources that are not Wiz, right? So say I have an alert from our EDR system related to a particular asset, and then I go fetch the information related to that asset from Wiz. So gives context to the analyst when they're analyzing the alert, right? So, okay, I got this alert, and this is any findings we have on Wiz that probably was not enough to create a ticket by itself, or just the scores and everything context that comes from Wiz. So we're using Wiz as an enrichment platform to other platforms as well.
Interesting. Okay, very good. And I'm guessing Tines makes that integration process fairly easy for you.
As easy as the initial pilot for this idea took less than an hour to be ready to go.
Nice. Love hearing that. Shashank, do you hear other customers of yours looking to do similar things?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the goal of Wiz, kind of like as I highlighted, is like kind of starting with that proactive posture management, risk management approach. But you know, we also have cloud detection response capabilities with our Wiz sensor. So and we also, again, because we were kind of focused on the cloud, we've taken a lot of events from AWS CloudTrail and other kind of like real time event sources. And our goal is to kind of correlate if there's a specific virtual machine or any workload, if we're seeing risks and we're seeing threats, we're actually able to correlate all of those within a single platform. So that's definitely, I think, especially for Tines, I think a lot of the use cases that we see is our CDR capabilities with our sensor detect suspicious activity, which then kick off a lot of these automation capabilities within Tines, which include, you know, creating tickets and kind of getting the SOC team or the incident response team starting to respond to those threat detections.
Fantastic. I guess it probably makes sense that we take a second here and maybe take a step back and kind of go through a bit what this automation's actually doing. I know, Walter, you said it looks like something that you might want to do next. So let's talk about that in some more detail here. This is pulling cloud configuration findings from Wiz. Wiz, like many other great APIs, paginates. That way you don't get all the data dumped on you at once. So this this is a loop over here that just checks for more results from Wiz and paginates through all of the pages until there are no pages left. For each finding, we go in this particular example, we go ahead and we create a Jira. So Walter, we'll have to help you change this over to ServiceNow, but I'm guessing that probably won't be too difficult. We send a message via Slack and then put a prompt in the Jira ticket in the Slack message asking a human if they want to remediate this. If they do, it goes down the remediation step and a trigger, and it reaches out to the necessary tool, whether that be maybe it's making a S3 bucket in AWS private because it came on as public, like you mentioned in the beginning, Shashank. So that analyst is able to take the action right from their case management tool, right from their chat tool, and we'll meet them there to work on that. This story, this automation, this workflow is hosted in our story library on the Tines website, along with many, many other examples of how you can use Tines and Wiz together. So, Walter, if you get curious after this, you go check that out too. Awesome. Shashank,
I will.
oh, any last ideas here on how we can expand this a little bit further, maybe? And or is this look pretty great to you as it is?
I think it looks good. I do want to give a shout out to the Tines public playbook. I think that's like a great source if you're looking to kind of see how you can use Tines and Wiz or Tines and other solutions kind of together in your security automation workflows. It makes it just like very simple and clear what you can achieve with this automation framework. And there's plenty of examples there, like you said, about how you know, Wiz can detect all of these different insights with risk and threats in your cloud, and then how you can automate a lot of the processes that your teams are going through.
Fantastic. All right.
Just really quick before we jump into this slide, if anybody on the call has questions, feel free to drop them in the chat box that's to the right of where you're seeing us, and we'll kind of answer all of those at the end here. Sorry, Eric.
No, absolutely. Great call out. Would love for some more questions or even thoughts to come in as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's take a look at the takeaways. Now that we've kind of gone over some challenges, we discussed some solutions, maybe a little bit of a summary here on a few things we talked about, and then add the scalability aspect to it too. So the challenges I heard was before Mars partnered with Tines and Wiz, automation was hard. It was time consuming. There was one person capable of automating at Mars. Lots of requests were piling up on his desk. Poor employee couldn't go on vacation, so it was taking a long time to actually get done. And then it was also hard to maintain all those automations as well. It was mostly done with Python scripting, and there just wasn't enough folks at Mars able to do it. The comprehensive visibility across all of the different cloud environments at Mars was also difficult. Things were potentially going on triage, and critical alerts may have been missed every now and then. And we really don't want that type of gap. So Mars needed much greater visibility across their cloud environments. And finally, to summarize that, there were gaps in identifying, triaging, remediating critical risk in a timely manner, getting this risk to the right team to actually remediate, making sure the people who were remediating had access to the correct tools to perform the remediations. All of this was time consuming, difficult to overcome, and a cumbersome process. So the solution was to
I think just really quick, Aaron.
Yeah.
I think it's important to highlight that these are challenges that Mars had, but these are challenges that every company who's kind of migrating from the on-prem world into the cloud is going to go through, as we kind of highlighted in the challenges as well.
Amazing. Yes, I totally agree. Fantastic call out there. So we appreciate that. The solution to all of this for Mars and many other customers is to use Wiz's agentless solution, which brought immediate visibility into risk across all the different cloud environments and reduced gaps across the different teams. And then to leverage Tines to route those very context-rich Wiz alerts to the right teams, surface the correct data from those alerts for the teams, and enable analysts to build their own critical workflows without having to start typing in Python. Now, Walter, you saw this firsthand. I got to meet you before you knew about Tines and Wiz, and you're probably a little skeptical of me then. And I think I probably told you how you could scale these solutions. Can you talk a little bit about what your experience has been since partnering with Tines and Wiz and putting this into place?
Yes, and I was very skeptical. I will not lie. I think you probably remember us trying to find where we would have to have those little boxes to drop Python code in, and we couldn't find it. So, but yeah, it came as a surprise how easy it was to escalate and to leverage Tines for other teams, rather not only security teams, right? Of course, we started with our immediate neighbors in security, like cloud security and some other groups, compliance and risk management. But yeah, it was easy. I shouldn't say easy to sell, but easy to adopt for other teams, especially when they don't have a Python wizard in there. Interesting fact is I found it's a little harder to get someone who's already used to do Python automation to move into Tines than someone who never played with Python, because it's a new concept. They will take it. When it's a Python developer, they'll be like the initial shock, right? I'm skeptical. I'm sure I'll have to write something, and then when they figure out, like, okay, so. But it was really easy to scale and get more teams, and even like IT operations nowadays getting on board to use Tines.
Amazing. I'm definitely going to have more questions about that too, but we talked about that in a second. Shashank, anything else to call out here, or did Walter communicate everything you want to hear?
I think Yeah, I think just hearing from, I guess, his firsthand experience, I think is the best way to kind of cover the solution and the scale. So nothing for me.
Perfect. Okay. All right. So we've reached the most exciting point of time in our webinar experience today, where it's time for Q&A. So if anyone on the call has questions for us, I know we've had a few trickle in that I'm going to work on addressing. Go ahead and use the Q&A box. I believe it's next to the video on your screen, and we'll be monitoring on our side and try to address as many questions as we can. So I've had a couple of questions come in regarding case management and how to open cases with Wiz alerts, leveraging Tines. As we heard Walter discuss, Mars is funneling these alerts into ServiceNow. Walter, we'll have to talk about that maybe. So Tines has a case management solution that we have some customers leveraging. It's a very slick solution in the sense that all of the functionality that powers Tines cases is built leveraging Tines automations. So we can allow for human interaction very easily by embedding pages into the cases process. We store metadata. We allow for comments, attachments, descriptions. We also have a records component that allows you to do correlation across many alerts or many tools, and build visuals and dashboards off of those records as well. So by no means do you have to use Tines cases. As Walter discussed, Mars is using ServiceNow. We're open to using really any case management solution as long as it has an API. But Tines cases is worth a look, and we'll be happy to do a demo and get more into some competitive analysis with what you could gain from Tines cases in a one-on-one session on that. There's another question in here regarding if, to summarize it ultimately, is it easy for Tines to communicate back to Wiz after the alert comes in and mark the alert within Wiz as like in progress, for example, or maybe add a note? Absolutely, super simple to do from a Tines perspective. We just work with our friends at Wiz. We'll get the correct API and HTTP request within the Tines automation, tie it up in the right place regarding the different logic that you want to use. We have customers doing this today, and I'm sure we have stories on our story library that have examples of this as well.
Yeah, and you can either do what Aaron said. You can also go in and manually update the issue and just mark it, however you want, either as resolved or in progress. And the third thing that happens is whenever Wiz runs its next scan, it's able to detect if that risk still exists or not, and it automatically updates the issue as well. So there's really 3 ways that this can happen.
Awesome. Walter, there's a question here. I'm happy to take it if you'd like, but the question is, what happens after Tines creates the ServiceNow ticket? Do you want to take the first stab at that?
Yeah, so the tickets initially routed by Tines to the appropriate team, right? The team was going to work on the ticket and take action, eventually document everything and close the ticket in ServiceNow. If required, Tines will do sync it back. Not for Wiz in this case, but if we're talking about any other alerting platform, it's going to go back to that original platform and update the status and even add documentation notes to that. Say if we're talking about EDR alerts, for example, right? It can go back to the EDR and close it. I would be lying if we're doing this for Wiz right now, because I'm not sure. I would need to double check that story, honestly. But yeah, we use Tines to do the two-way communication between systems as well.
Yep, and we can help you get that hooked up if you need it, of course. On that note, can you talk a little bit about the support and customer experience for both Tines and Wiz after becoming a customer?
again, started very skeptical because the pre-sales is one thing and the post-sales is a different thing, right? And sorry about the transparency, but I wouldn't be here today talking to you guys if the post-sales was not above average, right? It's a partnership, as I mentioned before. We've been in constant touch, talking to each other at different levels of both organizations, right? Development of tools, feature syncing, and everything. So it's been quite a nice experience.
Fantastic. Glad to hear that. All right, there is a question that came in that I absolutely love because I wanted to ask you about this. You kind of hinted at it earlier, Walter. The question is, do you have 141 stories built for Mars or built for Mars all around Wiz right now? Or do you have other things in the work aside from automating with Wiz?
Yeah, those 141 stories. They are, I think there are three related to it, honestly, right? There's a lot going on there. For obvious reasons, I would not be able to break down every single story and all the platforms involved. But
Fair.
yeah, right. There are multiple levels of security platforms and IT management systems and such that are connected to through those stories.
Okay. And do you have teams outside of security automating with Tines?
Yeah, we are right now talking to IT operations for system health monitoring and remediation, so automating some of the remediations on IT systems. The most, I should say that, but the traditional going to the server, fixing something, or troubleshooting an alert before getting to the analyst and the kind of thing. So yeah, IT operations is on board with us there.
And I think your data analytics team is using Tines. Is that
My bad. Yeah, that's right. We have data analytics. They like it. They like it a lot. So that to integrate different data sources, transpose data from one data source to another, even ETL layers, right? Transformation and everything with data when they're working. So yes, that was a little off the wall when I saw it, but they're very creative.
fantastic? Um, let's see. There's so many great questions in here. Let's take one. Let's see. In Wiz, not all findings generate issues. Can Tines recognize and trigger an automated response to findings that do not create issues? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So we need a way to just surface the alert. So whether Shashank is do only the findings generate alerts, or is there other ways to for us to push alerts to Tines?
There's other ways. I think the integration itself is currently pushing issues, but there are other findings that can be digested in different ways into Tines. But the integration itself kind of has the issues being transferred over to Tines.
Okay. Yep. And I'm sure we can work on that together with the customer and figure out a good solution there as well. Um, do you have any use cases of actually doing automated remediation and not just reporting into CMDB?
I'll take that. Yes,
Okay.
yes, we do. and if I may, right, I would just jump into the follow up question about that. We don't trust the CMDB blindly, right? CMDBs are never perfect. There are some contingency protocols in there when you don't find the information on the CMDB. It ends up landing at the SOC, and the SOC will follow through other indicators. We are doing this work right now in trying to understand how we can automate that discovery part when we get something. What other indicators related to that asset would lead us to identify the owner or the team that needs to be routed to. But nowadays we depend on human knowledge around organization and processes.
Amazing. I love hearing that. Walter, when we were talking about your data analytics team using Tines before, obviously we can use Tines for non-security use cases, but maybe turning that back into security a little bit. Shashank, can you talk a bit about how Wiz can help make security a team sport?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the main things that we highlighted in the challenges is how the cloud for security teams really introduces the development, the DevOps team, and all of these teams to kind of work together. So I think one of the goals of Wiz is when we generate an issue, how do we make it crystal clear that it's an issue that should be prioritized right now if a developer or a SOC analyst or a DevOps team is receiving that alert? And then how do we bring the context there to say, hey, is this, if this is to do with a container image, is this with the base image? If there is a vulnerability here, is that vulnerability have a known exploit? We try to kind of add all of this different context to give you the context for whether you need to prioritize this issue or not, right? So I think like when a developer gets an alert, the first thing in their mind is, hey, should I be building this new feature or should I focus on this alert that the security team has sent me? And when you make it crystal clear that the security alert is a public exposure on a virtual machine that you spun up that has admin access to sensitive data, that becomes a lot clearer for a developer saying, okay, I should probably focus on this instead of building this like net new feature, right? And I think that's how you can kind of bring developers and other teams kind of within the security ecosystem in an organization.
Yeah, I've heard that before. And then also like maintaining that high level of due diligence to make sure only the proper people have access to those tools is also an important matter for compliance as well. And we've been known at times to work heavily with compliance teams to help solve some of those issues too. So thank you for that. All right. Well, thank you, Shashank and Walter, for joining me today. Also, thank you to all of our attendees for taking time to hear about how Walter at Mars has really created a great partnership with Tines and Wiz and how their security posture has been improved. We appreciate all of the efforts that everyone put in, and for those who have joined in to watch, we also appreciate having an audience, of course. So just a few follow-up items here. If anyone's more interested in learning about Tines or Wiz, you're able to book a demo directly on our website. They're both Tines and Wiz have case studies with Mars, specifically with Walter's team. So you can find those on the website as well. We have a blog post going out on the Wiz website about our partnership. And finally, you will receive a recording of this webinar in the next 24 hours. So thank you, everyone, and we appreciate you all joining.